People have been claiming for a long time now that the Gospels contradict one another regarding certain events. But I believe this is completely false, and I'm going to explain why. The truth is, we do see a lot of differences in the respective Gospels, but differences are not always contradictions. Contradictory statements are always different from one another, but different statements are not always contradictory. When it comes to historical or biographical accounts, a lot of times differences are due to different aspects of the accounts. When multiple people tell or record the same account with differences, it's entirely possible that they're telling different aspects of the same account. And that, of course, is not a contradiction. And you also have to keep in mind that sometimes people may choose to omit certain details of an account, but an omission isn't a contradiction either. I'll give you an example of what I mean. Over the years, it has been asserted that the Gospels contradict one another regarding how many angels were present at Jesus' empty tomb. But is that really the case? Let's take a look. Mark chapter 16, verse 5 says, "And entering into the sepulchre, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, clothed in a long white garment, and they were affrighted." Matthew chapter 28, verses 2 through 3 says, "And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven, and came and rolled back the stone from the door, and sat upon it. His countenance was like lightning, and his raiment white as snow." Luke chapter 24, verses 3 through 4 says, "And they entered in, and found not the body of the Lord Jesus. And it came to pass, as they were much perplexed thereabout, behold, 2 men stood by them in shining garments." John chapter 20, verses 11 through 12 says, "But Mary stood without at the sepulchre weeping. And as she wept, she stooped down, and looked into the sepulchre, and seeth 2 angels in white sitting, the one at the head, and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain." In Mark and Matthew, we see 1 angel present at the empty tomb, and in Luke and John, we see 2 angels present at the empty tomb. So how do we reconcile these passages? Isn't this a clear contradiction? Actually, there isn't a contradiction between these passages at all. It would be a contradiction if Mark and Matthew said there was in fact only 1 angel present at the empty tomb. Only 1. But neither Mark nor Matthew state that. They mention 1 angel, but they don't state that only 1 was present. So it could be that for whatever reason they decided not to mention the other angel. Imagine having a conversation with 2 of your friends. Let's say their names are Mark and Matthew. Now imagine later on you told your mom that you talked to Mark earlier that day, but you told your dad that you talked to Mark and Matthew earlier that day. Now would that be a contradiction? Of course not, because you did in fact talk to both of them earlier that day. You just chose not to tell your mom that you had talked to Matthew as well. Now this is clearly an omission, but an omission isn't a contradiction. And this is what we see in these gospel passages. We know that there were at least 2 angels present at the empty tomb, but for whatever reason, Mark and Matthew chose to only mention 1 of them. That is not a contradiction, it's an omission, which of course is not a problem. Also keep in mind that neither Luke nor John state that only 2 angels were present. So it's entirely possible that more than 2 were present. We don't know, but we do know that at least 2 angels were present and that there is no contradiction between these passages. What we have here is an omission in Mark and Matthew. There is no contradiction.